Hello everybody, this is Jane, and in English with Jane today we're going to be looking at writing for entry to ESOL, that's English for speakers of other languages. So first of all, let's think about word order. It's very important when you write to make sure that you've placed your words in the order of the English language, because some of us in our first language have a different order of words, so check that. Today we're going to look at my hobbies. And yes, we want you to enrich your English, but think very carefully. First of all, is the writing I'm doing informal or formal? And when you've decided that, you can pick your hobby or interest that you're going to write about. I'm going to write about number 6, watching films. So, are we ready? First of all, I ask, what do I have to write? Oh no, I haven't been told what the text will be. I don't know if it needs to be an article or something else. So what I'm going to do, because my teacher just said write about your hobbies, I'm going to choose the basic plan structure, which is opening, middle or end. And some of us call that introduction, detail, conclusion. So I'm thinking about my structure. I also need to remember that when I've written my work, I need to review it. I need to go back over my skills. I know what I've been asked to write, and I've decided on the idea for my plan. And I now need to double check that I understand that I'm writing non-fiction, transactional writing, because this means you need to include facts, opinions, and it's all about the real world. So, are we ready? First of all, I need to write my plan, and we're going to do that as usual with a spidergram. Do you remember that I often ask you to write in your spidergram, what is the hobby, who do you do this hobby with, where do you do this hobby, what can you tell me about the details, can you suggest to other people some things that are really good about this? Well, for today I'm going to just include some sentence starters rather than add that information. My hobby is, yes, that's a good starting point to begin your first sentence. You could also say what you like to do. I like to. I go to. That's important. We need to know where you go. And it may be that you say, I attempt to go, because I attempt to go to the cinema 3 times a month. Wow, that's really good. But maybe that doesn't happen. So I might say, I manage to go. I manage to go once a month. You also need to write about the cinema itself. Where is the cinema? Is your cinema in London, Birmingham, Sheffield, Newcastle, your local town? Whereabouts is that? Where is the building? Is it close to the shops, behind the shops, next to something of importance? Remember that because you're talking about your hobby, you can actually use that phrase, I would love to. I would love to be able to have a cinema in my house, or I would love to be able to follow my hobby every day. That would be nice, wouldn't it? Then think about also what you want to say to other people. Would you encourage other people to go to the cinema? What about people you know whose grasp of the English language is not very strong? Would you encourage them to go to watch films? Do you think it's a good thing to do to improve your English? Who do you go with? What can you tell me about the cinema? And when you're talking about the type of films that you go to watch, remember you can also say the type of films you couldn't watch. So some of you like horror movies, but you don't really like to watch them at the cinema because the screen is so big. So you might say, I couldn't watch horror movies at the cinema, but I could watch them at home. I particularly like, and then once you've thought about those ideas, you want to look at your adverb of frequency. Put that word into your writing to say what you do sometimes, but not all the time. And if you're talking about a hobby, going to the cinema, you might say that sometimes I buy popcorn and drink. You need to finish off your ideas by adding a sentence that's either reflective of your hobby or saying something about something that you learn or really like. So perhaps I will learn a lot of English this way. Well, this is really an excellent hobby. You might then, now that you've got your spidergram, think about what order am I going to write my ideas in, because remember, the spidergram isn't necessarily in any order, so you've got to work out, what am I going to write first, what am I going to write next, what am I going to finish off with. And I've put in bold the area that I think you need to begin with and end with. Because you're doing a piece of writing that is for City and Guilds ESOL Skills for Life, it means that the piece of work will be marked internally. So this is the marking scheme that your tutor will use to mark that piece of work. Make sure that you know what you're expected to do. Understand where there is an allowance for errors. So for example, spelling, you're not expected to spell every word accurately, but you are expected to spell words at entry level 2 level accurately. And your punctuation and capitalisation is very important, so make sure you've checked it. And because you started before the plan, you started thinking about whether your piece of writing was formal or informal, you should just check that you followed that all the way through. So I've written my spidergram, I have some plan, I've thought about the order of my ideas, and now it's time to write. Well, we're going to imagine that I did that piece of writing, because I'm going to leave that bit to you. As I'm moving on now, imagining I've completed this piece of writing, how do I review it? That means check your skills, go back over it, make sure that you understand what you're being marked for and that you have included the right information. So my first question, is your writing in the correct order? Let me look. Ah yes, I started with telling the reader what my hobby was and I added information. Then I finished by saying this is really an exciting hobby, so I'm pleased with that. Have you used the correct sentences? Let me check. Yes, I put all my words in the correct order. Yes, I checked my verbs and I used different forms. I used I go to and I love watching. Yes, I used a modal verb. I couldn't go every week, so I put that negative in there. Yes, I used a modal adverb. Perhaps I will start going to the cinema with my friends now too. Yes, I remembered my articles and I've checked they're in the right place, and I've double checked that when I wrote the word cinema I put the cinema, just to make sure that article was there, because sometimes when I'm talking I forget to say the cinema. Yes, I used an adverb of frequency. I used sometimes. Sometimes I have popcorns and drink. Yes, I used a prepositional phrase of place because I wrote about where the cinema was, and I actually wrote the cinema is next to my favourite shopping centre. Do you see what I did there? I added in that extra adjective. And I also used an adjective after the verb to be because I used the sentence, the cinema is always clean and busy. So I'm really quite pleased with that work, and that's the end of my piece of writing. So all I have to do now is pass my exams. So good luck everybody. Bye now.